everybody. Welcome back to the Autistic Voice Project. I'm Matt from Kentucky,
I'm Erin from Napa, California.
and today we have a special guest, Becca Lory Hector. I can't remember where you're from.
I am from just outside of Bangor, Maine.
Oh, that's a good place. Oh,
Cool.
I have a friend up there named Hunter Hammerson, and she does a thing called Tiny Nonsense, who will and she's actually our next guest, and you are like located within like a half hour of each other,
Oh,
and
sweet. You should
yeah,
send her my way so that we can connect.
yeah,
There's
well,
not a lot of people up where I am.
yeah. If you want, stick around because she's literally our next guest after you.
Okay,
Preview for
cool.
next episode. But this is a double feature because we are living in a world of chaos and malice and horrible things, and one of the purposes of developing this podcast, in contrast to other previous podcasts that we may have done and been scarred by, this is our purpose here is to help people live a happier and healthier autistic life. And part of that is self care because we absolutely need to take care of ourselves in a world that is very draining, that is chaotic, that is just completely insane. And and Becca, you wrote a book about all this. What was that book that you wrote there?
I did. I've written a book, and so my book is really about my journey as a kid, without identification, without kind of any knowledge other than I knew I was different, and kind of what troubles that what that kind of challenged me by, and what I learned through it, and also just kind of what it inspired for me in terms of the rest of my life, which is how I developed my course, which is really that self-care piece that we're talking about. And my course is called um excuse me, oh my goodness, self-defined
I've
living.
been there previously. All of our episodes up until a few weeks ago was me hacking and coughing. So
Yeah.
it's a recurrent theme.
Excellent, because I'm on the tail end of COVID, and so that's kind of where
Oh,
it's
Oh my
coming from.
gosh.
Yeah. So yeah, my course is called Self-Defined Living, and that course is sort of takes all of this stuff that I've learned, and then everything I learned in my journey when I got identified at 36, and how I rebuilt a life around that information, right, that it provided me with, and the real difference between what it was like without that information, and the difference that it's made for me to have that information in my life, and then really lean into what it means to be autistic, what it means to be neurodivergent. Um, and really just kind of defy the rules we grew up with and say, I need to make my own.
so this is a big thing for. So one of Aaron and I have talked a lot in the past about the extreme problems in the diagnostic process and how there are a lot of people who go without a proper diagnosis and proper understanding until much later in life because young white cisgender boys are often diagnosed because they come up and say, I love trains and I'm only going to talk about trains, but literally everybody else, especially if you're a people pleaser, which is what we call phoning, you might do well in school, you might be well spoken, you might research other human beings to try to learn how to human more effectively. And in doing so, you fly under the radar. You are not quote unquote bothersome to other humans. And therefore, you don't know that there's something different. Well, you know there's something different, but you don't know what until much later, and that could cause a lot of damage. So what happens when you get finally get this label later in life and realize that you've been autistic all along, but you've got a lot of ground to make up?
Yeah. It was really overwhelming. I was somebody who came to my identification at a very, very crucial point in my life. I say, without any joke whatsoever, that autism saved my life. I was 3 years homebound and suicidal at the time of my diagnosis. I had plans, I was ready. Okay. And it just happened to be that the diagnosis came into my life and I went to seek it. And because of that, right, my life was saved. I was willing to give life another chance,
How old were
right?
you again?
I was 36 years old when that happened. So
Wow. Oh, that's a
33, yeah.
coincidence. because that's like the average life expectancy of us
Yes,
these
I don't
days.
think I haven't noted that when I've done
Yeah.
speaking engagements in the past, right? And when I talk to other autistic people, I talk a lot about being on borrowed time because of that, right? I definitely am someone on borrowed time. I know it. I was given a gift, right? And so really this thing landed in my lap and I was, at death's door and I had a choice. I could take this information into my life and say, all right, for one last darn time, I'm going to take this information and I'm going to try to use it effectively and see if I can change my outcome. Or I could have said at that moment, and nobody would have thought any badly of me if I had said, oh, see, I was right. I'm disabled. I told you that my whole life. Give me my SSDI and leave me alone.
Yeah.
Right? I could have done either one of those things at the time.
Yeah.
And I was certainly angry enough to do either one of those things at the time. But to me, I thought, okay, really logically, as an autistic person, if I do this thing where I try out the information and it doesn't work, that other route is still there. So I'm not losing
True.
it. So logically, let me
Yeah.
try and see
Yeah.
what happens. Because if I don't
Yeah.
like how it goes, I can always say SSDI, flag me and stop, right?
Yeah.
So I decided to go on that journey. And because I went through what I call the risk door and took
Mhm.
that leap to really kind of give in to what this information could inform in my life, I just kind of like went in the way we go into with any other special interest. And that's what it became for me was how do
All
I
in.
learn everything I can about this thing? Now I want it all. I want all the information. I want every little bit detail, every book that's ever been written. I want to know every autistic. I want to, right? The whole thing. And so I did. I spent that first year after my identification seeking all that and leaning into that hyper focus, that special interest in this topic, needing to know everything about it. And leaning into that was key to my healing, right? It was the first time I allowed myself to experience regulation, right? By
Mm.
leaning into this thing I was interested in. And in doing that, right, I sort of became an expert in self, right? And
Yeah.
at a
And
certain point, I thought, man, I'd really like to pay this forward. I want to be the person that answers the phone for somebody else. I want to be someone who maybe steps in for somebody else at 26 instead of 36, right? And that kind of thing. And that is really what started my journey into advocacy. I needed that first year to myself. And I beg autistics when they get an identification late in life to take that first year and be selfish. Just lean in, give into all of it. Let yourself review your life prior, right? Give into those wanting to see the autism from your childhood and let yourself be angry at the adults that have disappointed you and let yourself be sad about all the things that could have possibly have been, right? And kind of really allow that roller coaster of that first year, because it's after that that you really learn to who you are, right? You
and
have
this
to
is a
get
big
in there.
thing about like the holistics, because when when they approach autism diagnoses, they say, "Oh, you may feel sad about all this," but it's not for that reason.
Right.
It's because we missed out on all those years of being the people that we could have been, of being the
Being the
people.
people that we are. Right.
Yes, 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 because that's the
Right?
thing.
Like,
Tell us, because the difference between assimilation and being our unique selves. Erin, because you work with people a lot on this. What is your
I do.
experience?
Yeah. I mean, not everybody encounters their autism diagnosis with joy. I think a lot of folks who come in thinking, hey, I might be autistic. I'd like to explore this. Those folks are already more ready to hear it and are more often like there's the grief of a lifetime up to this point being lived according to rules that don't fit, according to standards and, cookie cutters that don't fit. And so there's definitely grief there. And then there's also the process of learning, okay, well, what do I need now? What do I know about me? Right? And what can I learn about me? Um, for folks who don't have autism on the radar or who are operating from outdated or stereotypical perspectives of um, what it means to be autistic, those are the folks that I find that have the hardest time because of internalized ableism or because they're thinking about their experience from inside out instead of thinking about the DSM criteria, which is written from the perspective of outside observers looking at a person and making assumptions about behaviors
and
instead
and
of
and for those people who this is their first time ever listening to an autism podcast and they have no idea who we are, what is internalized ableism?
internalized ableism is the discrimination a person has internalized from the social environment they're in about what a person should and shouldn't be able to do and how well they measure up to that.
Oh,
There's also disableism, which this is actually something I learned not that long
that's
ago.
a new term
Disa-
for me. Tell me what that
disableism
means.
is also a thing, and that's the bias against people with disabilities. So we have
Fascinating.
both at play. So anyways, the folks who struggle are really the ones who struggle more, I think, at least in my experience. And my experience may not be your experience, dear listeners. So if you have a different experience, please know your experience is valid. Um,
We don't all have the
so
same experience?
I know it's a
Really?
it's a shock, and yet it's true. It is absolutely the truth. Um, for example, there are people out there who like to drink Pepsi, and I am not that person. Anyways, sorry. Um, I just threw that in there, didn't I? I'm a Coca-Cola
It's
girl.
like now it makes me wonder what came up today to cause like, damn it, Pepsi, it's you again in my refrigerator, in my
No,
own home.
it was me looking at the collection of Mexican Coca-Cola bottles that I need to take to the recycling and going, yeah, that's my drink. Um, anyways, all that notwithstanding,
There's an
we do
interesting
not, in
tangent
fact,
there, but we'll stay on topic.
all that notwithstanding, um, so some people experience a great deal of relief, especially if they're the ones who are like, okay, I've dug in, I've tried to figure out what's going on. I think I might be autistic, but I really need a diagnostician to like confirm it for me, which some people need that, right? And it's totally fine to need that. And then when they get that confirmation or when they really commit to their self-identification as autistic, that can be a huge relief, right?
A
But
good a good
it
autism eval
yeah,
is as refreshing as Mexican Coke.
if not perhaps more so, right? And so anyways, the the folks who don't have it on their radar, it can kind of go either way. Um,
Tell us about
and
this.
and
Tell us about
yeah,
the because again, that's the studies have shown that we have a high rate of suicide because of all of these factors, because of this pressure to conform, this pressure to live up to an artificial standard, this pressure to turn off our own needs and our own wants and our own abilities to conform to a system that is in no way made for us. So we again with the ableism, we say that there is this mythical I can do it all. I will pull myself up by my bootstraps and work a 12-hour day every day for 47 years and then die peacefully, which I find insane. And then there's apparently
but
disableism.
by the way, nobody can actually do that.
Well, pull self, and that's the thing because the whole pull self up by bootstraps is meant to be a thing that you can't possibly do because otherwise you
Mhm.
can fly. And no one, this mythical puritanical standard of work ethics is insane, and it only serves to benefit the employer, whom benefits from all of your labor. It's
Right.
it's a bizarre myth that kills us all. It just tends to kill autistic people sooner than allistics, even though the allistics
Yes.
are, being killed by it too. So,
Mhm.
yeah, and then of course these biases of I've seen a lot of autistic people saying, I am not disabled, I am high functioning."
Mm.
And
Dun 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 dum.
yeah, I can definitely handle loud noises and bright things and small talk. And I'm the kind of person that the reason we record on Fridays is because every other Friday I have my son, and well, on the days that we record, I need to sleep for about 15 hours because that's what I absolutely need, because otherwise I can't get through the world. Because, as an autistic
Mhm.
person, even though I am an LPP, I am a psychological practitioner, I am capable of doing autism evaluations in the state of Kentucky, I do therapy, I have my own business, I've helped to develop a Trail House, our autistic led autism center. I am a parent, I could drive an automobile, I could put on my own shoes, I pay taxes, I once
You
played
pay bills.
baseball, but I am disabled. And that's an important thing about all this, because there's a lot of people who eschew a word which here means don't want that label, and it can be very confounding when you say, what do you mean I need to take care of myself?
Mm.
Mhm.
And that's first of all, Erin, how do you deal with that? And then Becca, we'll come back to you in your course, because I realize now I should have gotten your book off my bookshelf up there so I could show people. But I'll turn off the video in a little bit and grab it for you as you're talking about
Sure.
things. But Erin, tell us about your work with this whole internalized ableism, internalized disableism, autistic self bigotry sort of thing. And then
Mhm.
Becca, we'll talk more.
Well, I think part of it is helping people notice when that crops up. Like, well, I should just be able to wake up when my alarm goes off, right? Like,
The
really, says
shoulds.
who? Yeah, shoulds. Yeah, shoulds are always a clue to some kind of self-critical thought, and then you have to start getting curious about, like, well, where does that message come from?
Yeah.
Well, my parents instilled a
A work
Puritan work
ethic.
ethic. Right, right. Okay, okay. Um, but sometimes it's hard. Well, yeah, it's hard, but I should just be able to. Well, okay.
Have you
What
tried
what if?
just suffering?
Yes, um, suffering, the 100% way to make yourself more miserable.
Yeah.
Um,
Ha!
the in, or like, could you be compassionate to that part of you where, like, maybe you'd like to wake up immediately when your alarm goes off, and it's hard, right? So
Yeah.
self-compassion is a huge piece, and it's something like this. And this is a minor soapbox I'm just going to hop on for a second. I will promise not to rant about this too long. Self-compassion is where
20
it's
minutes
at. It's
later.
not.
Go on.
What's that?
20 minutes later.
Oh, shut up.
Yeah.
Um, self-compassion is where it's at. It's not self-esteem. Self-esteem is feeling good about things you've already done. Self-compassion is about having compassion towards yourself for the things that are hard. You don't get self-esteem from pushing through because you know you were suffering while you did it.
Yeah.
If you have instead compassion and gentleness towards yourself, like, oh, hey, I have a 9 a.m. client, and so in order to be ready for that 9 a.m. client, I need to have clothes on by 8:55, right? Like, and look, real
Some of us
talk
have
here,
higher
folks.
standards than others.
Some of us do, but you know what? I have those mornings where,
Yeah.
like, clothes on at 8:55 is a fucking win.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of us go to work with pants. Look how special I am. Yeah.
I always wear pants. I'm not gonna get into, like, the way that it weirds me out to try to be on a Zoom call without pants, but I am always wearing pants. So if
I
you're a
feel the
client of
same way,
mine
Erin. I
and you're
am right
watching
there.
this, I want you to know I'm wearing pants.
It
That's
is
on
my
your website.
nightmare to think about that.
Guaranteed to wear pants.
Right, exactly. But anyways, TMI for anybody who didn't care about whether or not I was wearing pants. Um, but like sometimes that is the win, right? And if you're struggling to wake up in the morning, acknowledging that it's a struggle and being kind to yourself removes the layer of emotional, mental, and physical energy that goes into the self-critical cycles of, but I should, but I should, but I should, but I should,
What kind of
right?
damage does that cause to a person to keep shooting themselves like that?
Oh, it's that contributes to burnout, that contributes to depression, that contributes to anxiety. The end of the road on that is suicidality. Like, it can be crippling. So stop shitting on yourself, peoples. So, anyways, yeah, self-compassion is a huge piece. Um, and yes, also self-esteem is nice. Like, be proud of what you've done. Be honest with yourself about what you've accomplished and be proud of what you've done. And also have compassion for yourselves about the places where it's hard, or the places where it doesn't come as easily as you might want, or the places where you're still learning and you're stumbling over your whatever, right? Um like that's a huge piece of it.
And that's a big
Which
thing.
also goes
Oh,
into self-care.
yeah, and that's a big thing about like autistic centered therapy because one of the biggest components is advocacy work, advocacy for self and for others. And if we if we have to acknowledge that we do have these quote unquote special needs, then we have to be more compassionate to our fellow human beings. We have to be more compassionate to those people who are possibly more disabled, more visibly disabled than we are, despite the fact that we might be just as disabled, but we're working 24/7 to hide it. So when we come across people who say, "Oh yes, I cannot work a 5 day work week," you must say, why am I working a 5 day work week? That's insane. Should anyone work a 5 day work week? That seems a bit excessive. What's up with the Puritans? Why were they insane? And it's one of those things I think that we as humans could do better on all around, but it requires that realization that we deserve compassion, that we need to be compassionate to ourselves, that we need to be compassionate to our fellow human beings, and that treating each other terribly is not a good long-term solution.
Right. Which is true for, weirdly, all people, because when you take it out of the special needs category and just make it needs,
Needs.
then all of a sudden, like, oh, you know what? This person has needs too. So does that person. We all, generally speaking, have a need to use the restroom in some kind of a way that works for our bodies. We all have a need to ingest nutrition of some kind in ways that work for our bodies. Like, we all have a need for sleep, even the people who think they don't ever need to sleep. Um, like, and then we need other things, like a person who is colorblind might need glasses that helps them see colors they can't normally see. The person who who is, you know, blind or low vision, who wants to navigate the world independently, needs training on how to use a cane and braille and, you know, use the other built-in structures that we have around society to help them navigate the world. The like we all just have needs. Why can't we just have needs and be kind about the fact that you're like, "Hey, I need this." Like, why can't I just ex- why can't we just be like, "Oh, you need that? Well, here, I can help. I can do
because
that for you."
because then we are flawed and not this paragon of virtue that has been imagined with our invincible bootstraps.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
so
that's it exactly.
yeah. So Becca, what is up with meeting these needs? How do people find out that they have needs?
Well, I think what it comes down to for me is really self-awareness, right? And really learning for yourself what are the things that are important to you and what are the things that you value in your life. And doing that is a really long journey. Coming across those pieces and really trying to figure out who you are is a bigger journey for those of us who get to identification later in life, right? We have a lot more to undo before we figure out who we are. And so it's an important piece of it all is kind of going on that journey and first figuring out who you are underneath all of that, and then trying to create a life that chases those things instead of all the shoulds and supposed tos that Erin was talking about.
I love, by the way, I absolutely love the fact that your book is called Always Bring Your Sunglasses, because I always bring my sunglasses.
Well,
And in
yeah, I mean,
fact,
for me, the title was really organic. I mean, that was my truth is that I always
yeah.
needed my sunglasses. I always should
Mhm.
have them with me, and I denied them to myself for many, many years. I would go lots
Right.
of places and be uncomfortable and push myself through and kind of, you know, for any reason other than my own comfort, right? It was always about other
Right.
people's judgments, right? You have sunglasses on
Mhm.
inside. Why do you have sunglasses on inside? Are you drunk? Are you on drugs? Are you lying to me? Right? All of these other weird rules around sunglasses. And
I
so
assumed
I
you were
knew I
drunk
needed
and
them,
lying?
but I really forced myself to ignore that need most of my life. And so to me, that's that. It's a little homage to self. It's like, that was the growth piece for me to just say, can't leave the house without them, need to wear them whenever I need them, no apologies.
I'll
And
never
this
forget
this
the
is
time.
a picture of the book, right? Well, it's a
Yay.
video of the book right here. And
Yay, there it is.
where would be a good place to buy this book from?
If you head to my website, I've got a little tab on my website called Always Bring Your Sunglasses. You can head there and order a copy through me if you'd like. If you would like to, also, you can go through Amazon for a Kindle copy.
And what is your website?
It is beccalory.com.
Becca, BECCALORY.com.
Yep,
And
that is
so
it.
tell us about this coaching and this life training and things that you do.
Right. So out of my kind of little journey, I was, I had to piece together kind of how to take care of myself. And so when started, I went to the self-help section of the bookstore, which is now called personal development, and they now call it, but it
Ooh.
was used to be called self-help. And that's the section I went to. And I think I found what a lot of autistics found was that there was good information there, but it was all by neurotypicals for neurotypicals, right? It was like, great that that information is out here, but it doesn't work for me in my brain. And so I had to do a lot of trial and error with the self-help type information that was out there, with the lifestyle design type stuff that was out there, just like a lot of us had to do. And I had to piece together what worked and what didn't. And what I realized was there were a lot of patterns in these people's books. So my little autistic brain was like, well, I like those patterns. Can I just take the patterns and replicate those? And that's really what I did in my course, was take all the things that I found to be useful and repeated by many people, and I just said, they wrap it up as like a full meal. We don't even want meat and potatoes. We want just the meat. And so my course is literally just the meat of what I consider to be the most important lessons of personal development for autistic people who need to create that life for themselves, who are coming into that identification later and need some help thinking about how to get rid of the shoulds that they gave into and rebuilding around those new rules, right? Your own rules. And that's really what it's about, figuring that stuff out.
That's an extensive bit of reprogramming. Especially if you spend 36 years of your life under the assumption that this is the way and that you're because again as we are not all the same human being, but
What?
given that a lot of us say, perhaps I should end it all because I am not successful.
Right.
Because people say that you should do this, you should do this, you should do this, and then you will be a successful human being. If we come about that, it turns
Right.
out that it's not that we're a not successful human being, it's just that we're running the wrong attempts at
Yes.
an
And in
operate
fact,
system.
that word was my trigger word.
Tell me.
Success. It was my trigger word around everything. Was like, why? I just want to be successful, right? And I was chasing this thing. And the thing about it is, when we think about the word success, it's wrapped up in a lot of shoulds,
Yeah.
right? So for
Yes.
me, what success meant wasn't a definition
Yes.
I gave it. It was a definition that was given to me by the
Right.
outside world that I never paused to question, right? I just digested it, right? So I was out there in the world chasing this version of success that to me, not only didn't I want, I was not interested in it, but I was having a really hard time getting there. Because the truth is, if you don't want something, you're never going to get it, right? Like it
Right.
doesn't matter how hard you try because it's
Yeah,
really
you're
not
not gonna
something that
fight
you
for it.
want. It's not something that fits you. So I was chasing, looking for a husband. I should have children. I'm supposed to get married and own a house and a backyard. And we're supposed to have Sunday dinners. And this is what's supposed to happen, right? Even though I have never wanted a child for a moment in my life, even though I didn't really believe in marriage until I was well into my 40s, even though, like a lot of things, right? So here I was chasing this thing that didn't match me. It didn't match me. So what I said is, well, what if I redefine success? What if I really look at that word and ask myself what it means? And to me, what it means is safety. It means comfort. It means being surrounded with people who like me authentically, right? It means not feeling burnt out, not feeling exhausted, not feeling like I don't want to be here, but instead feeling like I want to wake up every day and like my life, right?
Even though you're
Well,
not
and you're
having the family Sunday dinners that are apparently
Even
important?
though I have never had a Sunday dinner in my life.
Really?
and
Wow.
Really,
Becca,
With not
you're
having the
pointing
two and a
out
half dogs and a picket fence and
none of it.
whatever people have said is the desirable thing?
Amazing.
Wow.
but Becca, you're pointing out something really really important too, and I want to highlight it for our listeners um or watchers if you're watching this on YouTube. Um your a lot of your success metrics are about process, not product. And what I mean by that, or they're not outcome goals, right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to make $50 million a year, right? That's an outcome goal. Versus a process goal might be, I'm going to spend an hour a day working on XYZ skill, right? Um,
But what if skill doesn't bring you millions of dollars?
well,
What's the point of doing a skill if I don't have millions of dollars?
look, I hear you. I hear you. And yet, it can be rewarding in and of itself.
Really?
And when you're focused, I know, right? Weird.
Fascinating.
And when you're focusing on the journey and not on the destination, or not only on the destination but both, right? Like it's not a crime to want an outcome, but the thing that you can directly influence is the process. Right? So if you're working towards on a skill, you might not make $50 million a year. But on the other, and I'm thinking about calligraphy right now for whatever reason. But if you keep
That's some
working at
expensive calligraphy, madam.
right, but if you're that guy who I don't know if he's autistic or not. I do know he's massively skilled. The guy that just became the youngest master penman in the world. Um, his penmanship is just phenomenal. Like it
His hand
is
has a superior font to the rest of us.
uh it's just it's mind blowing. Like the way that he writes and you anyways,
I
um
really want to see that now because
yeah,
that's an
I'll
insane arcane sort of skill, and I would really like to see
and
that.
it is very, very incredibly cool. Um but like that guy probably does bring in maybe not $50 million a year, but I'm sure he makes a good living. Now that's just because you're practicing a skill doesn't mean you're going to end up there, but you're going to be better at it than you were yesterday,
Yeah.
right?
And that's the thing about it, I think that we don't catch, right? We find out
Hmm.
about him now because he's the youngest penmanship, right? But
Right, right,
nobody is over there videotaping him when he's crunching up papers and throwing them in the trash basket because that one didn't come
right,
out right. Right?
right,
And at some
right.
point, he started and was crappy. Like at some
Yes, at
point,
some point.
he began and was crappy, and nobody
Yes,
would have paid him a penny for his work.
right,
And so at some point, he
right.
was doing it for the pleasure, right? For the
And
joy of upping his own skill set.
exactly. And just because a person makes money at it eventually
Yep.
doesn't mean that was the goal,
Right.
right?
I
And
bet
that's
you if
the
we
thing
asked
that I
him, he would tell us no.
I mean, probably not, right? Um, it that's why it's so important to focus on finding things that you can do that the process is enjoyable for you. The next person that we have on for our episodes is Hunter Hammerson, and she's a knitter. And I have recently started knitting, and I'll talk about this more when we record our next episode, but the process itself of knitting is so wonderful for my nervous system, right? A- And like
It's
I'm never
almost
gonna make money at knitting. I will probably make some cool looking things at some point, but the process is the reward. The outcome is like it's also exciting, but the process itself is rewarding.
it's almost as if uh, you will get into what we call a flow state with a
Also
capital
that.
F,
Exactly. Exactly.
because that is how we meditate as autistic people. We get into our special interests, we get into this process, and this flow state helps us relax, helps us restore ourselves, and we build a skill to be the very best, like no one ever was.
Right. Yeah. That is something we often do.
Yes. So yeah, I think that this is a, good transition point, because our next episode will be Hunter Hammerson. But Becca, if you want to stick around, you we can introduce you, since you're like a half hour away from each other. If that,
All right.
you may be recording in adjacent houses. I don't know. I don't know where people live. I live in a tiny box. So we'll end the episode here. But dear listeners, come join us again, possibly next week or immediately after, depending on if you're binging this in the future or whenever. So we'll see you again soon on the Autistic Voice Project.